Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to start by questioning something pretty fundamental about leadership.
hmm
When we look at a really successful organization, we tend to think its advantage comes from things we can measure, right? A brilliant strategy or great systems, or maybe just hiring the most talented
I
people.
think it's you can see on a spreadsheet.
Exactly, the quantifiable stuff. But what if the lasting edge is actually something unseen,
Yeah.
something quiet?
And that's the shift, isn't it? That's what our source material today really forces us to confront. The greatest competitive advantage, it's not in the quarterly report. It's not in the org chart.
Where is it then?
It's in the quality of the trust that holds a team together.
Yeah.
It's like this invisible glue. The research actually calls it the silent currency of leadership longevity.
Silent currency. I like that.
It's perfect because if you ignore it, the team just fractures under the first sign of real pressure. But if you cultivate it intentionally, you unlock innovation, commitment, resilience, things that a great strategy alone just can't deliver.
Okay, so if trust is that foundational, and it sounds like the sources are treating it as mission-critical infrastructure, then our mission today is to pull out the blueprint.
That's it.
We're going to dive deep into how you actually build these high-trust teams, why these relationships matter more than ever now in this sort of complex hybrid world, and how to lead in a way that genuinely lasts.
Let's do it.
All right, let's get into our first segment. It tackles what the sources call the missed opportunity. Why do so many leaders, even really good, successful leaders, kind of put relationship building in the soft skills bucket?
Well, because it feels secondary, right? To execution, to vision, to planning.
And it's not as easy to measure.
That's the real reason. Strategy is concrete. You have KPIs, you have budgets. Trust feels abstract. But that whole mindset is it's insufficient now. The game has changed.
How so?
Well, think about it. You have hybrid work, which dilutes those natural organic connections. You have high turnover, so institutional memory is weak. And there's this constant pressure for speed. Leaders just can't rely on their title or their position on the org chart anymore.
So you're saying that old model of mandatory compliance is basically dead?
It is, essentially, yes. Teams today, they expect transparency, they expect to feel aligned with the mission, and they need that deep psychological safety that only comes from trust.
And if they don't get it?
They disengage. And at first, that disengagement is silent. It's just, a little less initiative, maybe some resentment, but eventually it becomes permanent. And you have this catastrophic loss of momentum. It's a shift from compliance, I do it because I have to real commitment. I do it because I believe in you and in what we're doing.
Wow. That shift is huge. And it explains why so many strategies that look amazing on paper just fizzle out when it's time to execute. So if I'm a leader who is focused on output, how do I even start to measure this unmeasurable thing?
You start with a diagnostic question. It's a really critical one from the research. You have to ask yourself, when was the last time I didn't assess my team's output, but the strength of the relationships underneath all that performance?
I'm guessing most leaders skip that step.
Almost all of them. But if you embrace it, you get this simple but really transformative framework. It goes like this. Trust leads to collaboration, which then leads to sustainable results.
So it flips the script.
Completely. It moves leadership away from just reactive firefighting and puts it squarely into intentional, long-term culture building.
I think the most powerful claim I read here is that if your relationships are weak, even a genius strategy will just crack under pressure. The sources even call trust a survival skill. That sounds dramatic. Why survival?
Because without it, the organization itself is unsustainable. When a crisis hits a market downturn, a tough merger, a huge technical failure, trust is the emergency reinforcement.
The rebar in the concrete.
Perfect analogy. Without it, people just fall back on self-preservation. Finger-pointing starts. And the collaboration you desperately need to solve the problem just evaporates. The research treats trust like the electrical grid of the organization. Without it, you can't carry the mission payload. It's that critical.
It turns a group of talented individuals into a single, resilient team. Okay, I get it. Let's unpack the practical side of this then. In segment 2, if trust is the foundation, how do we build it predictably? The sources give us 4 pillars.
And they are absolutely interdependent. You can't skip one. If even one is weak, the whole structure is wobbly.
Okay, give us pillar number 1.
Integrity. This is the bedrock. It's the alignment between your words and your actions. People will follow character long before they follow competence.
So it's more than just not lying.
Oh, much more. It's about being the same person in every room. The historical example of Joseph in Egypt is so powerful here. He earned his influence not just from interpreting dreams, but because of his moral consistency. He kept his word and acted with justice, even when he was in prison and had nothing to gain.
So what's the modern equivalent for a leader today?
It's things like transparency in your decision-making. It's about consistency between what you say to the board and what you say to your team on the floor. If they sense a mismatch between your stated values and how you actually spend money or handle tough feedback, trust just vanishes instantly.
But integrity alone can't be enough, right? Not in a world that demands results. That must lead us to pillar 2.
It does. Pillar 2 is competence. This is your ability to deliver reliably. Trust grows when people know they can actually depend on you to get the job done effectively.
So you can be the most honest person in the world.
But if you constantly miss deadlines or make bad strategic calls, people lose trust. Not because you're a bad person, but because you're ineffective.
And how does that get more complicated in a hybrid or a remote world? Because you can't always see someone's competence when they're not sitting across from you.
That is a huge technical challenge for leaders now. You can't rely on those casual hallway conversations to signal that you know what you're doing.
So you have to be more deliberate.
Much more. Leaders have to create structured, transparent ways to make competence visible. Things like open source reporting, clear project dashboards, peer reviews, ways to show reliability across distance. The example of Nehemiah is great here. He showed competence not just with a vision, but with rigorous planning and execution, rebuilding a wall while fighting off political attacks. That visible competence inspired confidence.
That's the gap between being a visionary and being an executor.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can imagine a leader who is competent, has high integrity, but is totally unpredictable. That would be nerve-wracking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that instability brings us right to pillar 3, consistency. This is about the predictability of your behavior over time. Teams thrive when a leader is steady, when they're not making erratic decisions or managing based on their mood that day.
From a psychological standpoint, that makes sense.
It reduces anxiety. It lowers the team's cognitive load. They don't have to waste energy trying to guess which version of their boss they're going to get today. They can just focus on the mission.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second. In a fast-moving environment like a tech startup, isn't competence valued way more than consistency? You have to pivot all the time.
That's a great question.
Mm.
And the sources would argue that consistency doesn't mean you're rigid. It means you're consistent in your character and your process.
Ah, okay.
You can be consistently adaptable, consistently fair, consistently transparent about why you're making a pivot. The example of Daniel is perfect. He maintained his core devotion and wisdom through multiple chaotic political regimes. His character was predictable even when the world wasn't. That's why people trusted his judgment.
Understood. Okay, so we have integrity, competence, consistency, and now the last one, the one that's often dismissed as the soft skill.
But it's absolutely non-negotiable for true commitment. And that is pillar 4.
Care.
It means showing genuine concern for people as whole human beings, not just as cogs in a machine.
Not just as contributors to the bottom line.
Exactly. Your team has to feel valued beyond their latest performance review. If you have the other 3 pillars, but you lack genuine care, your leadership feels cold. It's transactional. And loyalty will only last as long as the paycheck.
So how does a leader show care without seeming, weak or overly familiar?
It's about intentional investment and advocacy. The historical example of Jonathan and David is a masterclass. Jonathan risked his entire political future to protect David. For us, today, care looks like actively investing in your team's development, offering real flexibility during a personal crisis, or publicly praising effort even when a project doesn't quite succeed. It's about prioritizing the person over the project when it really counts.
This synthesis here is so powerful. All 4 have to be working. If you have integrity and care, but you're not competent, I might like you, but I won't follow you into a fire.
Right, you're a nice person, but not a leader I trust.
And if you have competence and consistency, but no care, your team will perform. But they'll leave for a better offer without a second thought.
Exactly. The sources are clear. If even one pillar is shaky, the entire relational architecture is unstable. You need all 4 reinforcing each other to build something that lasts.
So these pillars give us the how. Now let's look at the proof. Let's move to segment 3 and see how this played out historically. The research points out that really the greatest movements were built on relationships, not just on systems. Let's start with David and Jonathan.
This is such a great example of what the sources call covenantal trust. Their friendship wasn't born out of convenience. It was forged in the most high-stakes, volatile political environment you can imagine, King Saul's paranoid, jealous court.
And their bond was described as covenantal. What does that mean in this context?
It means it was deliberate, it was sacrificial, and it was unconditional. It was designed from the start to transcend their own ambition and the political pressures around them.
And the key insight here is that this loyalty, it wasn't just a nice story, it was actually mission critical for David's survival.
Absolutely. Jonathan's loyalty was an active shield for David's destiny. The argument here is that faithful allies are essential for any leader trying to navigate real danger and fulfill a purpose. When you build that kind of deep covenantal relationship, you are actually building an operational asset. David could move with more confidence because he knew he had an advocate right at the center of power.
Let's look at another case study then, the early church. How did that community become such an unstoppable force?
Well, it wasn't because of flawless organizational charts or, a perfect 5-year strategy. Their rapid growth was possible because the relationships were strong enough to carry the weight of an explosive mission.
So what were they doing on a practical level?
They practiced what the sources call intentional fellowship, daily shared meals, prayer. They were fostering real intimacy. They showed incredible vulnerability by sharing their resources, their possessions, and there was this constant active mutual care.
So trust wasn't just a value they talked about. It was the actual operational engine that allowed a group of ordinary people to become this resilient movement that, frankly, outlasted empires.
Yes, all because their relational integrity was so high. It's a powerful lesson that deep connection is a greater strategic advantage than managerial control.
Okay, let's pivot in our fourth segment to the flip side. What are the things that silently sabotage and fracture all this trust we've worked so hard to build?
The sources point to a few key internal barriers. The first one is a big one: over-reliance on hierarchy.
The because I said so school of leadership.
Exactly. When a leader leans on their title instead of on real connection, it immediately breeds compliance, not commitment. Your team will do the task, but they won't bring you their best ideas. They won't bring that extra initiative. It just creates a very transactional culture.
Which gets you through today, but sets you up for failure tomorrow.
Precisely. The second one is ego, pride, defensiveness. These are instant trust killers. They just shut down listening and sabotage any chance of real collaboration.
We see this with King Saul.
A tragic example. His insecurity, his ego, it made him incapable of hearing from his most trusted advisors. It fractured every important relationship in his life. A leader who hides mistakes or refuses to admit they were wrong just demolishes the consistency pillar.
And the third one feels like maybe the most common because it's not about malice, it's just absence.
You're right. It's neglect. This is what happens when leaders are so focused on the metrics, on the strategy, on the tasks, that they just ignore the relational health of the team. If people feel unseen, unheard, undervalued, if the only time you talk to them is about their quarterly review, the result is always the same: low initiative, silent disengagement, and eventually burnout.
It's clear that leadership rooted in trust requires real intentional presence. So if we pull back from the day-to-day and think bigger, we have to talk about legacy. And the research poses a really humbling question here.
It does. The question isn't what will you build? It's not about the structures or the strategies you invent. Those things are temporary. The real question is, who will you build?
That hits hard. It forces you to look right past the spreadsheet.
Because buildings fall down. Tech strategies become obsolete. Titles fade away. But the one truth that endures is that legacy is relational, not structural. It's the empowered people who carry the mission forward long after you're gone.
And that legacy is transferred through things like mentorship.
Yes, through intentional relational investment. You see it with Moses and Joshua, with Paul and Timothy. The whole goal is to make sure the next generation is ready, steady, and strong enough to take the baton and run even farther than you did.
Okay, so let's try to summarize this entire deep dive. We've established that lasting leadership is rooted in trust, this silent currency. It has to be built intentionally on 4 pillars: integrity, competence, consistency, and care.
And it's ultimately transferred through relational investment by focusing on building people, not just building projects.
You're not just managing tasks, you are in fact shaping an entire relational ecosystem.
And that full progression, laid out in the sources, is so clear. It starts with relationship, which builds trust. That trust enables collaboration, which produces results, and that finally creates legacy. The leaders who are remembered, the ones who leave a real mark, are the ones who get that order right.
So, since the greatest chapters of your leadership might very well be written by the people who come after you, here is a provocative thought to take with you this week. What is one specific high leverage relational decision you could make? Maybe a moment of real care, a difficult but honest conversation, or a true act of empowerment that the future generations of your team will genuinely thank you for.